right. Well, shalom and peace to everybody. I hope you guys have been having a wonderful, wonderful week and keeping yourself cool in this amazing heat that's been going on all over. I know it sure was hot and has been hot here for several weeks now. So, uh, welcome to each and every one of you, though. Even though we run into outside circumstances, the goodness and the blessing is that what goes on inside of us. One of the greatest joys, and I really do think it's really on many levels, I do think it's miraculous to find how much how much truth is coming out very fast. Uh, it's as if we are living in a day when truth, and it may very well be the veil thinning, and so this is being released. I don't know, there could be lots of reasons why, but it is quite profound, the balance, the picture that's being painted is becoming ever clearer. And so I hope you are experiencing the same revelation. Inevitably, we must all experience it for ourselves, and but it's sure wonderful. So peace to you guys. We'll come together, if you don't mind, and we say to you today, Namaste. All right. Well, we're here in this book, and we've been able, through past life regression, we've been able to go through someone's life from the time they're young and had pictures and ideals and beliefs and thoughts, and now we are approaching the end of her life. In fact, that's what Dolores focuses on. And I think that's relevant to many of us people who, well, are less young than we used to be. I like that term better. Because all of us, no matter who you are, as you move into the end of a time, a dispensation, and yes, she was blessed, as you'll see, and we have also been blessed. I was counting my blessings. There's been several things that have come out spiritually lately that are quite kind and loving and empowering, and my gosh, we're just beginners at the front end of this thing, and the power and the things that have gone on already in history, recorded and then hidden from us, and then gone through again and then hidden from us, is just absolutely overwhelming. There definitely is a war in the cosmos, and that war is to keep you ignorant to what reality is. And so I think we all begin to wax a little bit philosophical. We begin to look at the world and begin to think about things maybe we should have been thinking about our whole life that we never found the time for, and now you find the time. And so I think it really fits with all of this that's going on. The beauty is to find out that really death is really should be celebrated more as a beginning, more so than it is an ending. The ending of the journey in this humanity is very small. The beauty is that we'll get to make some sense of this and experience other things, and then most probably we'll be back again in a new context, in a new body, for a new journey, for a new purpose. And we've been doing that for hundreds of thousands of years. And so if that is not part of what you've known most of your life, then that may be a little strange to you, and you may even think that it's not real, and that's fair. Everybody has a right to believe what they choose to believe. I didn't say that just because you believe something makes it right, but you certainly have a right to be wrong if you choose to. So we jump off in chapter 11 tonight, and death is but another pilgrimage. And I think this changes so many things. It really does. As I've been in the car and stuff this week thinking and things being brought back to my memory, I look back at the things that the Bible, there's really a massive having to deal with to balance. How do you get your mind to grasp the reality that everything that you were told that the Bible's saying is a lie, or most of it anyway, and that all the things that you weren't told is really a lot closer to the truth. And so if you're one of those people on a journey in this lifetime for looking for truth, some are, some never will, and some will maybe at another time. But I've also found, and I believe it's been true for my own journey in lives plural, but I believe I've been looking for the truth for a long time. I believe for thousands of years I've been looking for the truth, and I keep finding little pieces of it, and then I think back and things come to my mind that there's no way or no reason that I should know that, and yet it correlates with something else that I've learned in this lifetime. And so I don't count any of those things as being insignificant. I think they all have a part to play in the scheme of things. So death is but another pilgrimage. How sweet the words are. So when I die, I get to start a new pilgrimage. That's pretty cool. So Dolores writes, I knew there would have to be one or more sessions to complete the story of Naomi's association with Jesus. We would have to take her through the past part of her life, and also wanted to find out some more of the things she had heard about him, rumors or otherwise. I used Anna's keyword and I counted her back. 1, 2, 3. We have gone back in time to when Naomi lived toward the end of her life. What are you doing and what do you see? And Anna responds, her voice sounded very old and tired, and it remained that way during this entire session. It was quite a contrast from the innocent, naive quality of the 13-year-old whose story dominated most of this narrative. She responds, I'm in the village and the sick people who have leprosy and I caring for them. And Dolores asked, did you ever get sick from them? And Anna says, no, I've been in good health most of my life. I have learned many things about healing and I have protected myself. And so Dolores says that is a common fear amongst the people, isn't it? They are afraid that they may catch that disease. And Anna responds, yes, and the fear is what brings on most diseases. Folks, that's a message that's being preached as if they had no knowledge of any of this. That message is relevant very much so today. That we really have kind of isolated the concept of what really sickness is. Sickness is an outworking of dis-ease, or not being at ease in your body. And so it's a fear a lot of humans possess. And so the average person would be afraid to go to that village, wouldn't they? Anna says, yes, it is difficult to get people to care for those truly in need. And Dolores says, about how old are you now? And Anna sighs, I am 68. She seemed unsure. And Dolores says, then you have lived a long time, haven't you? And Anna weakly says, yes, I have. Dolores says, how do you feel about your life? And Anna says, I feel I've been blessed in many ways. I feel I've been of service, and I look forward to moving on. What a way to end your journey, folks. And so Dolores asked, did you ever marry? Anna says, no, I came very close, but it would not have worked. And Dolores says, did you ever regret that? And Anna says, no, not overall. I filled myself up with other things. I know the man I loved. I was blessed with those rare moments. But that in itself is enough to fill up that part of my life. I knew I had other things to do. And Dolores says, you were really dedicated. Have you ever gone back to see your parents again? And Anna sighs and says, oh yes, I did. In the beginning when they were living, if I was on pilgrimage, it might have been once a year and as often as I could after that. It became difficult to make journeys, and it became harder to find those people to train and to take my place. And so think about this. It almost paints the picture, and we can certainly apply it to ourselves. Here we have a little young 13-year-old girl that has a knowing inside of her. In modern society, parents in general and society would tell her that she shouldn't waste her time at many levels being that she should go have fun and she could be concerned about all the things that everybody else is concerned about. And I think it really speaks to the character of this human, because oftentimes I've watched people do that with other people and have the people leave the place that they were supposed to be, and then they get full of disease, unpeaceful inside, and they never do find their way back. And so I think it really speaks to who her moral character is, that she didn't let what everybody else thought was right or what everybody else would do. She didn't let that drive her. She drove what was inside of her. We've heard the saying, and they're so clichéic, and yet they are so mystical, it's not funny, friends. The information of ancient times, and when I'm talking ancient times, I'm talking 20, 30,000 years ago, the humans that lived and the information that they left behind. And we're going to look at some of this in the future, so I'm going to tell you that you should really gird your loins, because the things that are going to come are going to be much heavier and much deeper. This is all just surface fluff. It's all just surface fluff. It's good. We need it. We certainly have to get the fluff before we get the meat. But Paul said that mature people are supposed to be hungry for meat. And so, but the fact that she never let that deter her from her path. And I'm sure all of us probably have forms of regret of things that we let people in our lives deter us. You know, it brings up the age-old question, what might I have been if I had not chosen to be what I am? And the answer is unlimited. You could have been anything on this earth that you chose to be. And if you were not good at making choices, then that can sometimes not resonate very well, or, you know, bring about emotions. And on the other side, if you were really good at choices, then you had a pretty good life and you don't have many regrets, and that all works too. I love that she has no real regrets, no matter what's gone on. And so Dolores says, you were really dedicated. Have you ever gone back to see your parents? And she says, oh, I did. You can tell that this even is kind of a sore spot. I think there's some things that are starting to manifest about relationships and people, and you know, I wanted to I guess kind of make a comment about this principle, because I know many of you may never know all that's gone on, but there was a 2-year span, probably 6 months or a year ago, where it was just crazy how the Creator kept bringing separate. Everywhere I went, everything had something to do with separation. And at first, I wondered if it was just me, but it kept happening. And so, I certainly think I have a slightly a better picture, although I understood what was being said. I'm not sure that I came across to a lot of people. Then the first statement to be made is when people choose to exit your timeline, and sometimes those people are in the wrong path, and it will cause them harm, and sometimes those people are guided in the right path, and it will be a positive thing for them. But don't be deceived even for a second to think that I've in any way said that those kind of pains don't hurt. They do hurt. If your love is real, then it should matter to you. And so the way that I said that, something quickened me yesterday, I think it was, that I needed to try to at least bring a little clarity. This isn't about anger, and it's not about ego, and it's not about all that other junk. Part of this life is learning how to accept things that aren't the way you want them to be. And the only way we can ever truly align, and I'm going to tell you that's a lot bigger thing than most people have a clue of. That was a word from God, and it does have massive significance. In fact, most will never experience the full power that they could live in because they have no knowledge or desire to align themselves properly. Without it, you will never do anything. You can learn and you can listen, and you will never accomplish anything spiritually. You must be in alignment. And so that's a month's worth of teachings right there. So when we get in alignment, though, then we go through this life and this journey, and the doors are open to us to be able to manifest. And part of the manifestation is manifesting the life that you chose. Yes, there are many lines. You could have been anything. You could have been the president, you could have been a doctor, you could have been this, you could have been that, you could have been this, and they all would have taken you somewhere else in a different dimension, and you would have lived a life and raised kids, and they wouldn't be the kids you have, they would be other kids, and on and on and on and on and on and on, and you chose every one of those things. And that's really difficult for us to understand because we've been raised our whole life that life is destiny and happenstance. You only meet people happenstance. There's no divine orchestrating of people that come into your life or divine orchestrating of people that leave your life. And just so you know, just because that happens doesn't mean that that's even necessarily what you want. It's that as we grow and learn spiritually, we have to learn that it ain't about you. And I hate how much ego I see in people. They just don't understand what's going on here. It's really horrible. The self is going to destroy most people's operation. I'll just leave it like that. And so she let her ego go. It wasn't what she wanted. I promise you, what she did through her whole life in this incarnation, that wasn't what she wanted. It was what she knew she was supposed to do. And one has character, and the other one means you're just another human who knows nothing. It's not real kind, I guess, but it is true. And so she's responding about her parents. Oh, I did in the beginning when they were living. If I was on pilgrimage, it might have been once a year, and as often as I could after that. It became difficult to make journeys, and it became harder to find those people to train and to take my place. So once again, that's another outtaking of her character. Okay? I know if you'll look around in our society, there are lots of people that are jump and run people. They tell you God told them, and it's like, well, God ain't talked to you for the last 25 years. All of a sudden now he's guiding your directions. That's funny. But such is the way that people behave. And so she never changed course. She never let those things deviate the course. And I think that speaks a lot to all of us and will, if we will allow it to, as to what it is that the universe really is asking from us. That doesn't get talked a lot about. And that's one of the most important statements that exists. And so, then Dolores asks again, then did you spend most of your time in that village of the lepers? Anna answers, much of my time, but there were other villages I went to. Some of the villages were regular communities where meetings were held to teach the laws of God and healing, and others were just to be of service where I was needed. Were any of these large villages? Abigail says, no, most of them were just small communities where the people couldn't get care. Almost as if, you know what most parents would tell their children today is that girl wasted her life. Wow, that's really sad, the lack of enlightenment that exists in our society. And so Dolores says, I was wondering about some names of the places that I might recognize. Anna says, well, I continued to go back when I could to Bar-El, and I went to a village of Ramat and the leper colony in Grafna. Dolores writes, I was not surprised when I could not find any of these towns in the present-day atlas of Israel. My research stated that there were a large number of small communities in that area whose names, if they were ever recorded, have not come down to us, or they may have changed over the centuries. The Jewish man who helped me with my research said the names of the towns were definitely Jewish. Bar-El means the well of God. Beth Sharon, mentioned earlier, would mean the house of roses. Ramat means the hill, and probably had another word in the name. He could not immediately identify Grafna, except to say that it definitely had a Jewish sound to it. When I told these facts to Anna, she said it made her feel cold all over. She knew these details had not come from her subconscious mind because she does not know any Hebrew and has not been exposed to it in her temple, the Reformed Jewish temple. I originally thought that every Jew would automatically know Hebrew, but I suppose that is an illogical as to expect that every Catholic would know Latin. And so Dolores asked, but you mostly stayed in that one area, is that correct? Anna says, yes. It became harder for me to travel, and I spent most of my time here where I'm needed most. And Dolores says, did you ever go to Nazareth? And Anna says, yes, I have been there. And Dolores says, what is Nazareth like? Is it a big city? And I was trying to compare her description with Katie in Jesus in the Essenes. Anna says it was a fair-sized town, windy streets and whitewashed buildings, a marketplace in the old community. And so Dolores says, is the Nazareth area like Jerusalem? And Anna says it is similar but smaller. I remember the central area where there is a marketplace and the people come for water. Let me see. And there are some hills in the background, but it is small compared to the other city. And Dolores says, I was wondering if the countryside that you had to travel through was the same. And Anna says, the countryside around there. It is. I see some hills. I see dusty roads. Oh, it could be similar, yes. And so Dolores says, I have heard names of some places, and I was wondering if you had been to them on your pilgrimages. What about Capernaum? Have you ever heard of that place? Yes, Capernaum. Is that located near there? And Abigail says it is. I'm sorry. Anna says, is this? It has been a long time. I think this is outside, away from Jerusalem. I think wealthy. I remember a wealthy landowner there, and there were some problems. But my time was mainly spent where I was needed and of service in the capacity I was trained for. And Dolores says, what about the River Jordan? Have you ever heard of that? Anna says, oh yes, the River Jordan, yes. And a pause as though she was thinking. She says, this I remember when I was young, walking this area. It was lovely, yes. This seemed like reminiscing. And Dolores says, have you ever heard of a place called Qumran? This is where the Essenes secret community and mystery school was located, on the cliffs above the Dead Sea. And Anna says, "Ah, yes," and she chuckles, "the Nazarene. I heard this spoken of from the Nazarene, and I remember my parents speaking of it. It was a community where certain beliefs were followed and teaching went on, and the Nazarene spent time there. It was validation when she called Qumran a community. It had always been called that, even by archaeologists. It is never referred to a town or a village." And so Dolores says, "Did he tell you this?" Anna says, "I remember him telling me this, yes. He told me when he was teaching me the healing and how to be of service." And Dolores says, "What did he tell you about his time there?" And Anna says, "He told me he was taught of the ancient tree of life. He told me he had learned philosophies in healing, and he learned things that one is not taught in normal education." And Dolores says, "Is this the kind of community where things like that are taught?" And Anna says, "Yes, and in the school there, but I guess this community has a different philosophy." And Dolores says, "Do you think this might have been where he learned many of the things he used?" Anna says, "I believe this is true, yes. I believe he might have been exceptional as far as seeking information too, that others students might not have sought, and having access to material that only a few have access to, because he was interested in or discovered things within himself that he questioned." I think one of the largest teachings that you'll ever learn from Yeshua is that statement right there. It sounds as if he was taught things that the average person didn't know. That must be a different type of school there. Anna says yes. They learned how we live in conjunction with the universe and the connectiveness of all things and the path of this tree of life. Dolores says, "What do you mean by the tree of life?" Anna responds, "The tree of life is the ancient mystery that some people would cover up and never teach again. The temple would not teach this." And Dolores says, "Why not? I'm always looking for knowledge. I can't understand people hiding it." And Anna says, "Because they would lose control if people would be able to find truth within themselves, or have an understanding or learn on their own and maintain their own power and faith in the connectiveness with all things and their God source." And so why would they consider the tree of life to be something that people shouldn't know about? And Anna responds, "Because it is the truth. It is the very path of a person's body and being and body and soul. It's connecting us to the sun and the moon and the tides. It explains why things are and what they are." And Dolores says, "I think these would be wonderful things to know." Anna says, "These are what they call the Kabbalah." And Dolores says, "Oh, I've heard that word. It must take a long time to learn all of those things." Anna says, "It takes much dedication, for it is not an easy task to assimilate all the information and learn how to use it in your everyday life. You cannot pass on this information to the average person, for it is much too complicated. So you must learn to filter this through into simplistic ways so you can use it in your everyday life and be of service in this manner." Dolores says, "Did he try to teach his followers some of these things?" And Anna says, "I think he did in his own interpretations, so we were able to understand." And Dolores says, "You mean he made it so it wasn't so complicated? Did you ever go to Qumran?" And she says, "No, I have no memory of being there, no." And Dolores says, "Have you ever heard of the Dead Sea?" And Anna says, "Yes, I have heard of it. It has another name, but I know the name you are speaking of." Dolores says, what is the name you've heard it called by? Anna, with much hesitation as she tries to find the name, it is something like Elot, maybe the Elot stone, Elots. There's a beach I remember. And I've heard, Dolores says, I've also heard it called the Sea of Death and many other names. Why do they call it that? Do you know? And Anna says, I don't know why. And she chuckles, I don't think I remember the Dead Sea. I can't really remember if I ever known it by that name, although it sounds familiar, but I can't. And Dolores says, that's okay, I was just curious about it. Those are some names of places that I've heard about. Dolores writes, Anna said later upon awakening that as Naomi, she knew these places by different names, but she couldn't remember them. She thought the Dead Sea was called something like the Asphalt Lake, which it is. This was disturbing to her that she couldn't think of the correct names, but it was perfectly understandable because we were speaking to an aging Naomi, who probably had not done any traveling for quite some time, and at this point in her life she was devoted to attending the needs of the lepers. Later I thought of the connection of the Bible character Lot, whose story was definitely associated with Sodom and Gomorrah and the cities that lie submerged under the waters of the Dead Sea. Elot stone could refer to the legendary Pillar of Salt. It is a possibility. And the Asphalt name was also another name for the Dead Sea because of the large amount of pitch and tar located there. Another ancient name was the Sea of Lot. So Dolores asked, what about Bethesda? Have you ever heard of that? And Anna says, Bethesda? This is in the same area, I think. This seems to be another smaller community. These names are all so familiar, but I've been away from any of the little towns or cities. And so Dolores asked, I was thinking you may know them by different names anyways, but you mostly have stayed in that one area then. Have you been associated with many of the followers? Anna responds, mainly directly after his death, many of them scattered and went their own way, just out of fear for their lives. They lived in much fear for many years, and they went underground again. I just became strong and sighed, listened to my own inner voice and heart center, and I went on my way. I have a feeling of great sadness because the people didn't understand what he was really trying to do. These were the ones he was trying so hard to reach, but they couldn't handle the truth about his teachings and about God, and about the manipulation through the temple and the government. It is much easier for people to accept their normal lives because they are too afraid to change. That way of life doesn't require any thinking or any questioning. So they will just go ahead and comply. And because he was for change, even those people who were for him in the beginning turned against him, just out of fear to survive. I think his teachings were still being carried on by some of his followers, but they are going on in seclusion and very quietly in private underground meetings. They have lived in great fear. And Dolores says, were they afraid that someone would come after them? And Anna says, yes. Dolores says, then it sounds as if you are doing more of what Jesus wanted them to do. Is that correct? Anna says, this was my personal message from him, and this is the sadness that people can't seem to understand. He was keeping teaching. It is difficult to talk sometimes. Her voice sounded old and the words occasionally slurred. He was teaching life in its simplest way, in its truest way. That is why he was walking his path in teaching. And Dolores says, do you think most of the people who were following him didn't go out and try to help people as much as you're doing? And then it says, when they probably emerged again, it was very quiet. They were a source of fear for most, and the Romans turned everybody against them. The Romans had all of the control and power, so people are easily manipulated through fear. It's hard for me to understand why they would be afraid of these people, Dolores says. And Anna says, oh, because they might carry on some of the teachings and gain followers, and the Romans might have something to fear again. And so Dolores says it seems as if they wouldn't be afraid anymore after they had gotten rid of the main person. And Anna says his words and teachings lived on, even if they were once again being taught in these underground meetings, but most of his followers did not surface for a long time. Then you didn't have any contact with them. Anna says, I had contact with some who helped in the villages, or I would see them when I went on pilgrimage. What about the ones you call the disciples? Did you ever have contact with any of them? And Anna sighs, oh, it has been a long time, but yes, some of them were still having meetings in the bluffs near the Kinneret, and some of them were trying to keep the words of the Nazarene alive. So there were some of them that were carrying on. And Dolores says, can you remember the names of any of his disciples that were still doing that? And Anna says, I remember there was Simeon, pronounced Simeon, and thinking Avram sounded more like Ephraim, and there was Peter. This was said very slowly as though she had difficulty remembering. Naomi was now an old woman in these events and had apparently occurred many years earlier. Just so you know, Simeon is actually Yeshua's younger brother. Those are the main ones that you had. Anna interrupted, that I remember seeing again, yes. And Dolores says, did you hear of one of his disciples who was called Judas? And Anna says, oh yes, that turned against him. Dolores says, yes, I think he is the one that people mostly talk about. Anna says, yes, we knew about him before anything ever happened. And Dolores says, you did? And Anna says, yes, I had visions of this. Yes, we knew of him. And Dolores says, can you tell me about it? What did you know? And Anna sadly says, well, all I can recall is the last meeting with the Nazarene in my vision, and he told me how correct it was, and he knew. And Dolores says, you said you knew something that was going to happen to him. Anna says, yes, and he knew it too. He knew that there was one, and there were potentially more who could be swayed by coin and promises of wealth and power, who would turn against him, who, when intimidated enough, would believe the Romans and could be bought. It's hard for me to understand how someone who was around him could be that way. Anna says, well, we have free will, and if one allows fear to gain control, then they cannot discern what the truth is. So it is part of their life plan. But stop and let your mind rest a second on that. That's a huge, powerful statement right there about our journeys. So, if I get this right, fear then, if fear gains control of you, if you're functioning from a place of fear, then you cannot discern what the truth is. So you will discern something as being true, and in reality, you actually are following what is false. That's going on everywhere, all over the place, friends. More than you have any concept of. It's really horrible. There are people every day making decisions that are not in line with their timeline, and yet it is their timeline. It is the one they chose. That's why when we get to the end of our days, we won't have to worry about, because we will, at that spot, we will know that all that happened was because I chose it. That's hard. Most people aren't willing to be honest enough with themselves to look at all that their life is, whatever that may be, and say, I chose every bit of this. I orchestrated every step of this. I did everything that happened to me, and then to find reality with that. That's a pretty special person. There's not many of them around. And so she says, well, we have free will, and if one allows fear to gain control, then they cannot discern what the truth is. So it is part of their life plan. And Dolores says, have you met Judas? Anna says, I knew him at one time many, many, many years ago when I first traveled with the Nazarene. And Dolores says, did he give any indications at the time that he was like that? And Anna says, no, I did not have very personal contact, but there were no indications that far back. And Dolores says, what happened? What did he do? Anna says, he was persuaded by the Romans to help cause controversy and questions about this miracle worker, this man sent from God. He started riots and he caused the citizens to become violent. And Dolores says, you mean he was sort of an instigator? And Anna says, yes. Dolores says, what was about the time that the Nazarene was this about the time the Nazarene was arrested? And she says, yes, this was all set up with his help. And Dolores says, that's hard for me to understand. Did he get anything for doing it? And Anna says, yes, he received coin and land. And then Dolores asks again, what happened to Judas? Is he still around, or did you ever hear anything of him? And Anna says, I have heard various stories. I heard that he was murdered, and I heard he just could not live with himself after a while, and he killed himself. There are many things I've heard. And Dolores says, so he didn't get to enjoy the money or the land either, did he? And Anna says, no, not really. He couldn't deal with what had happened when he had to face himself within himself. It was more than he could bear. And so, just so that you understand, saying the concept of putting a statement out there about people looking inside themselves, and most won't, I don't think it's really all that foreign, and I think it's actually really commonplace. And I really do believe that it takes a really special person to be humble enough. And in my studying, which has been very, very, very varied, and I mean, I think we're studying things that are coming out of the 20,000 years ago now range of mysticism. And it's really amazing to me. I've studied some Vedic, which is from India, and I've studied some stuff from Tibet, and I've studied some stuff from Asia, and I've studied some stuff. And what is absolutely totally mind-boggling to me is that if you go listen to all of the Mahatmas or all of the leaders, including Yeshua, their message is all exactly the same. It's always been the same. The message, truth, has not changed. And so now we live in a day where two different sects of Christianity can have totally different beliefs and believe that they're both right. But the truth that is truth, I'm not talking about what people drunkenly perceive to be the truth. I'm talking about truth of the universe. It doesn't have a name. It doesn't have a sect. It doesn't have any of those things. It is the hidden, revealed truth. And that truth is the same across ages. It's really been quite interesting. It has done a lot for giving me peace and understanding and knowing that the reason he keeps telling me to continue doing what I'm doing is because the path is in front of us. It's up to us to choose to follow it, and if there's all kinds of things that will hijack you. And mostly yourself, but there are other external pressures that get put on you, just like we see with Judas. If they hadn't offered him money and land, he probably would have never done it in the first place. So he had an opportunity to change his timeline. He had an opportunity. He didn't have to experience any of that. That was a choice he made. And every one of us are making choices every day. So it's just really crazy how, whether you're talking Yeshua or Christ, if you want to, or whether you're talking Buddha, the Buddha's teachings that I've read are identical to the Vedics in India as far as principle goes. And so Dolores asks, so he didn't get to enjoy the money or the land either, did he? And Anna says, no, not really. He couldn't deal with what had happened when he had to face himself within himself. And dear friend, all of us are going to face ourselves within ourselves. The only question is, if you choose to do that and you do it constructively, well, then there's the other version. I'll leave that to somebody else who desires to walk that path. I don't. And it was more than he could bear. Of course it will be. It's no different than the accounting of the Akashic Record. What she just said to you right there, in so many ways, validate everything that I've heard about the Akashic Record. I think you guys, maybe a lot of people really think that it's just going to be like you see on television, that everybody goes there and it's going to be like singing the old, Negro spiritual, when we all get to heaven, what a day of rejoicing that will be. And there's a lot of information that's really been trashed and hidden and put off by New Age teachers that don't want you to hear this. All they want you to hear is it's good and happy and peaceful and joy. And that is, to be quite honest with you, that is not even part of the walk of the true spirit one. And there's lots of people that have been teaching that for a long time. And so if that's the walk you're on, that's the journey you're on. You have a decision to stay there, or you have a decision to look for trust and see if you're capable of discerning it or not. If you can see truth. Can you see truth? That's a really hard question. Can you see truth? I've been with people, and I could walk in and give you 5 truths that I saw immediately, and you look at them and ask them, what do you see? They go, I don't see anything. I see 5 people standing here, and that's it. And I do these kind of exercises with all kinds of humans all the time to listen to who the person is. Remember, as we grow, we should learn to accept people for what they are. That is to say, don't expect somebody who's not spiritual to be spiritual. They're not, and they don't have the ability to be. But if you're trying to walk on a path, you must know the people around you. You must. And so when you don't do that, then you're just like the person she just explained that just goes through life and has no clue. And so that line just is so heavy. It's just so heavy. And I don't know how many of you, are in your journey, whatever it may be, that you are in the place that you've begun that. But I'm telling you, when you do, there's many of these things, and you can find what I'm saying to you written by millions of people who have experienced awakening. Awakening is not always a really good thing. Because as you begin to awaken, you begin to see all kinds of things that were in your face every day, all day long, and you don't have a clue about where it came from. And yet it's always been there. You just were blind and could not see. I once was blind, but now I see. It's a spiritual song. And So Dolores then says, but you said that the Nazarene also had visions that this man was going to hurt him in some way. And Anna says, yes, he knew. He knew what his life purpose was. He knew why he had come here. He knew when he was supposed to ascend. Now, I admit that they certainly have put a kibosh on us knowing, but I think that that is true, but I think that what's going to be played out is that inside of you, you knew. Maybe whatever reason it got squashed, whatever reason, maybe your programming of an early age, you knew something and yet it got pushed out of you by pressures or family, or there's a million things that squeeze the life out of us when we're being birthed. And even worse, when we have parents that have no concept of reality, then they're probably not going to teach you reality if they don't know anything about it. And so Yeshua wasn't concerned. He knew those were parts of the timeline. And so when I say words like, I think if you really will allow yourself to grow at all, you will immediately begin to see the intrinsic value in negativity infinitely more than you ever will in positivity. In fact, that's another misnomer by very, very gifted people that is starting. I'm recognizing Source gave me that because I'm seeing that pop up around enlightened people, if you would, a lot. And so even that is going to help you, if you'll grow in that, even that will help you begin to recognize and make sense of what is and what isn't. So you can, as she did about the disease, learn to protect yourself. And so the Lord says, then he didn't try to do anything about it. Anna says he knew there was a reason for it. He knew it was part of the plan. So I've told you, and maybe you don't trust me or believe me, but here we have a picture of Yeshua saying exactly the same words that I've been teaching for 6 months. This stuff is it's almost puts humans in more of a perilous time. I get people that write me about the things they're watching on YouTube, and to be quite honest with you, while I do watch things, I watch a lot of stuff on there for the purpose of learning what not to believe. You might not have known that, but I hear all kinds of things, but the source that's in me is not going to allow me to follow a wrong road for very long. And so a lot of people close their ears off. They don't want to hear any of it because then they don't have to deal with it. Well, she just described that person as well. And so he knew there was a reason for it. He reveled in the negative. He didn't try to run out and change the negative. He embraced the negative for the blessing that it was. And he knew it was part of the plan. So he didn't try to stop Judas in any ways. Is that what you mean? Dolores, she can't deal with that. And Anna says, yes, that is what I mean. He played out the scenario of his life, of his personal purpose of being here. And if that included negative, bad things happening, that was also part of the plan. But there is a qualifier to that, although Yeshua had no qualms about the qualifier. And the qualifier was based on his character. See, if you are functioning in low character and you start making decisions and trying to act like you're Yeshua and everything you say and think is true, you're going to get yourself in a mess real quick. So purity of moral character is the qualifier Yeshua had that most people don't. His purity of his consciousness was not going to allow him, because he wasn't in fear. He wasn't scared of Judas going to kill him. So what? He could look and he could see truth. But you can't see truth if you're in fear. You only see what fear puts in front of your eyes. And so, yes, that is what I mean. He played out the scenario of his life, of his personal purpose of being here. As you said, this had to be Judas' decision, his free will. I thought you had probably heard many stories during the time since the Nazarene died. I have also heard many stories, and I didn't know what was true and what wasn't. Anna laughs. I don't know if any of us do. And of course that's right. And so Dolores says, that's why I wanted to ask you to see if you might have heard the same stories I've heard. Have you ever heard any stories about his birth? And Anna says, yes. I remember my parents talking. I was so young, there were things I really don't understand. But I know his mother had many children. It was thought a miracle that she was able to conceive a child such as Jesus. But it happened, and then she gave birth again. Everybody thought it was a miracle, but she chuckles, I'm afraid it happened the way it usually happens. And the real miracle was in the child himself, not in his birth. Those lines, just so that you know in a simple statement, what Christianity has done. I'm finding out the connection with Christianity is just it's like a bad phone call. You're still on the phone call, but it gets garbled up. That's because all through these writings, I can't help but read something metaphysical and correlate that with some scripture that I've been studying. I see the mysticism in Paul. I see that now I'm reading some mystics from ancient days, 10,000 years ago, that knew of some of these people, which gives you a different narrative. The oldest written information of this is back to about 20,000 years ago right now. So that means 15,000 years before there ever was a Moses, there was a truth that has been passed through all time. And that's all that's happening. It's resurfacing again. It's time. And it's resurfacing. Some people will grab on it. We had one go on in the turn of the century. There was a resurfacing of truth, and there were those people that grabbed it with all they could hold it, and there were other people that looked at it and walked off or kept going or whatever. They just never did anything. So where we're at in time is actually very much in the line, in the progression, if you would, of how truth comes back up to the surface, in spite of all the people trying to hide it. And so Dolores asks, is that the only story you have heard about his birth? And Anna says, well, people seem to think that it was some kind of a godlike conception. But I believe this is not the case. They had been trying to have children. And Dolores says, why do you think that people are trying to make it seem like a godlike conception? Anna says, I do not know. I think it is man-made ideas or for manipulation and power, which is absolutely correct. I do not know for sure, but this was truly a miracle child. Yet I would think we could all say we conceived from God. So that's not like that's difficult to get. We are all God's children. There have been other exceptional children, and indeed there have. There have been many exceptional children like Yeshua that have walked the face of this earth, hungry for truth and desirous to fulfill their purpose. And so Dolores then asked, that's what I was thinking. because he was so exceptional, maybe they thought he had to have an exceptional birth. And Anna says, yes, but I know there are others who have walked this earth, also with the God connection and love and ability he had, but he was, the man-made ideas about him. And Dolores says, well, these are some of the stories we have heard, that he had a miraculous birth. And I think we'll stop right there. We'll pick up. We got a week or two to go left before we finish this one. There is some really, really, really amazing things, friends, that we would have never known. Now, as I learn, I'm able, because I no longer have fear, I'm not scared about what if I die. I'm now looking for what is my journey on this life. I could care less if I die or don't die. What is my journey? Because I won't die a minute before I'm supposed to. I can be very confident about that. So, we all are here for a time and a season, and then we'll be doing something else. I have encountered some of you who tell me, you believe that you've known me. That's what intrigues you about me. That's what draws me to you, is that you feel as if there is a spirit connection there. And to be honest, that's probably more so true than we realize sometimes. There are other people that God puts in your life, and they're in your life to teach you a bad lesson, or sometimes to teach you a good lesson. Most of the time a bad lesson. And they exit your area, and you know, but sometimes we have good ones that were there just for a short season as well. So it's really quite amazing. I hope you guys are learning something, and even more than that, it's not just that I hope you're learning something, but I hope you're learning something because you're experiencing. It really is the experience. A guy from the 60s in rock and roll, he did a song and he asked, are you experienced? And that's infinitely larger than most people have any clue of. In fact, I find, because the Spirit comes through the mind in all kinds of subconscious ways, that most of the songs that were made popular, if you'll break them apart, you'll find that most of them are very mystical. They were given by God to humanity, and the question was asked, are you willing to listen? And most people aren't, so they just hear it as a song. And in reality, there was a very specific purpose for the universe giving that to us. And so if we would do that, it would change music completely. It would no longer be the thing that it is. There's lots in the ancient that I've found. There are chants that are so powerful when the people with true, pure hearts get together, that there is power that comes out of that. And so we're on an amazing journey. It certainly is. No matter where your spectrum falls in the midst of all of that, whether you walk a timeline and miss your purpose, or whether you find your purpose, it's still a journey. And so, peace to each and every one of you. I will say this: on Saturday, I'm going to be gone on a short vacation, if you were, and so we will be having a service, but it's going to be about an hour long. I will record that on Friday, a heartfelt teaching to you guys, maybe a little bit different context. God is changing things, and I know them. They haven't happened. Some of them haven't manifested, but they're coming. And while they could cause fear, there's no need to fear. God knows what He's doing. You just have to trust Him, and that is the journey. And so, shalom and peace to each and every one of you. I hope you have an amazing life. Namaste.